How many is it really early age exposure to pornography?
So the data shows, this is not data from Rebuilt Recovery. Like, this is actually research that anybody can find online, that the average age of first exposure right now is 11 years old.
Wow.
And it's just declining day by day by day by day by day. You said something to me at the beginning, before we started recording, that you were around 6. It was the same for me. So my kind of first exposure was at 6 years old.
The author of the 7-Step Guide to Life Without Porn, Frank Rich. Thanks for joining me on Knockin Doorz Down.
Jason, good to be here, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, we are going to dig into this. I kind of have a feeling you and I some similar backgrounds, maybe childhood trauma and other stuff that we'll unveil. But I got to know why. Why did your life turn to helping people? And most of the times the misconception is helping men with pornography issues. No, women are falling into this category. They're becoming more transparent about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point to make, right? It is a human issue, both men and women. Here at Rebuilt Recovery, though, we have really planted our flag on the male side of things. And there's reasons, behind that. Like, I'm a marketer. I understand messaging. I understand creating avatars. I understand really dialing a niche. And the more narrow you can get in who it is you're serving, the better that message is going to be able to come across, sure, particularly reach those. I mean, the podcast work that we do obviously reaches both men and women, but in terms of the coaching, I've had women reach out, and at this point, we're not interested in bringing them into our world. For one, because I think the men need a safe place to have, sure, the conversation, right? I think that's the biggest thing that I'm hoping we get out of here today, is just the openness and willingness to explore this conversation. I think that's important. And I think that really helps men that are struggling, really begin to remove a lot of that shame. You only have shame because you're not talking about what you're struggling through. The minute you open it up and you realize, like, my behaviors, my addiction, they are not a part of me. They're choices and decisions that I made. Because that's what shame ultimately is, right? It's like you looking at something that you're doing and saying, because I'm doing this, that makes me a bad person.
Yep.
And none of us are bad people. We may make some bad choices. We may make bad decisions in life, but that shouldn't allow us to look at ourselves through the negative lens. So I know I'm not answering your question here, but we do focus on serving the men, because our mission is ultimately bigger than just removing porn out of these men's lives. I don't think that the actual problem that men are struggling with is with porn in and of itself. I think a lot of times it's an identity issue. So over the last 18 months, our, if you call it mission statement or, purpose of what we're creating with Rebuilt Recovery is no longer about helping men overcome porn addiction. That was where I started, and I'll get to answer your question here in a minute. We've evolved it into helping men become better men by quitting porn first and then rebuilding their lives. So I do feel I have a unique skill set in terms of at least the industry that I'm in, with having a background in corporate leadership, being a trainer for 15, 20 years, being a bodybuilder, leading large and small teams. Like, if I just helped men remove porn and I didn't actually give them tools to become a better man, to become a better father, to become a better leader, to become a better business owner, then I wasn't utilizing my full skill set. So to answer your question, why did I do this? It's because it's what I'm here to do. This was not something I when I was in high school and you're writing down career days, what do you want to do? Yeah, I want to work in the porn addiction industry. Actually, to be honest, like, up until 2018, 2019, I didn't even really know that there was a real industry for, sure, these things. But getting it out of my life 3.5, almost 4 years ago, the way that I began to see the world a whole lot differently, the way that I began to see myself in the world incredibly different, led me to launching a podcast. So everything I do here started with just a mission to share my story to help transform people's lives. So I launched a podcast in July of 2019. It's called The Superhuman Life. We're 141 episodes. It's a weekly interview style show. And for me, the podcast was because, like I said, I began to see the world a whole lot differently as I was going through what we call like a reboot, where your brain begins to kind of rewire. You begin to see things a whole lot differently. You begin to experience more purpose and joy and meaning in this world. So had always been interested in podcasting. I'd been a consumer and listener for many, many years. And during my struggles and my addiction, I actually had probably 10 to 15, maybe even more, like, podcast ideas that I wanted to start it. that I wanted to start. It was literally me having to go through this journey that revealed to me, like, this is going to be the story of the podcast. So episode 1 was, the 90-minute kind of journey, from addicts, struggling with sex, drugs, alcohol, pornography being the big one, to ultimately, transcending that, overcoming that, realizing that I was meant for so much more. That led us to the podcast. 3-4 months into the podcast, we had tons of success, and you got recognized by Apple, new and noteworthy. I'd had an email list that, was on the fitness side, and I had a little bit of a public, Instagram and whatnot. So we were able to kind of get some early traction.
Sure.
But what's interesting, Jason, is, 3-4 months into the show, it's like the messages that I began to receive from men, because I've been coaching people online. So it was always, people would send me messages weekly or emails. Hey, thank you for your programs. Thank you for, the stuff you're putting on Instagram. Thank you for the YouTube videos. Like, you're helping us get bigger. You're helping us get stronger. You're helping us get shredded six pack. Which is amazing, right? If you can help somebody transform their physique, if that's going to go on to help them live a better life, I think that there's a lot of meaning in that. But what's cool, Jason, is those messages of thank you for helping me build my body slowly started to stop. And it was thank you for your conversations. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your willingness to address the topics that most people won't look into. So that was the first 3-4 months.
Yeah, and it's hard for men. I think I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 44. I'm about 5-6 years older.
Yeah, I'll be 39 actually here in 3 days. So,
okay.
Yeah, 5 years.
Right on. Yeah, no, I got your email. I meant to tell you a happy early birthday because I subscribe to your emails. I've been enjoying those, and I highly recommend people do it because you give nuggets no matter what somebody might be struggling with. That's really good for life in general. But it does fascinate me too. And I was sitting here thinking, as in the sponsor work that I'm starting to do in AA, but I think it's good you don't work with women, because I've had some female friends reach out to me and I've gone, I will connect you with a female that you can trust. And they're like, well, I trust you. And it's like, no, because you start to build intimacy and my stuff and your stuff, and then all of a sudden there's this intimacy, and there can be a boundary that ends up crossed. So I think it's good that you do that and give men that safe space to have conversation, because it's hard. I grew up in the don't talk about it, push through kind of era, and I'm sure you're running into that with so many of the people that you're working with.
Absolutely. I mean, right. There's an entire, so I did a podcast episode here recently with a gentleman, Dr. John Schinnerer. He's a psychologist, runs the Evolved Caveman podcast. He's really been diving deep into this man box culture stuff. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but it's this whole, kind of psychology world where it's like, boys have just been, they've really been hardened. And I think there's elements that are truthful here. I do think that men should be hard. I think we should be strong. I think we should be tough. We should have the ability to control our emotions. That doesn't mean that we're emotionless, but right. It's like, as young boys, it's like you fall down, you scratch your knee. It's like, brush it off, we don't
put some dirt on it, kid.
Put some dirt on it, right? We don't cry, we don't express emotions. Here's an interesting part, man, is for me, I had a grown man tell me he loves me for the first time in 2018. I didn't accept it right out of the gate. It was actually one of my best friends in the world. And he's actually responsible for bringing me to my faith. But it was interesting because we had been talking weekly. Like, we would always get on these, hour-long Zoom calls. We were working through business struggles. I was going through a lot of relationship things. At the time when I met Josh, I was really caught up in my porn addiction, and I had some issues with drugs and alcohol as well. But Josh just loved on me, man. And he showed me a different type of men that are out there. And there was one day where we were just having a real deep conversation. I forget what the topic was, but as we're ending the call, I was like, all right, Josh, I'll talk to you next week or whenever the thing was going to be. He's like, you too, man, I love you. And we hung up. And I was so uncomfortable with what he said, Jason, I literally sent him a text message right away. And I said, did you just tell me you love me? Like, don't ever do that again. And he kind of chuckled back, like, oh, it's okay, whatever. But as I've, gotten free of pornography, as I've really leaned more into my faith and really tried to become more Christ-like, but also because I was telling you how different I see the world and how different I see myself living in this world. I tell all of our men that I love them. Not right out of the gate, So we host group coaching calls about week 4, week 5, as we're exiting the call is usually when I'll drop the first, I love you guys. And it's cool because you get to see the progression of these men. So that first 10, you maybe get 1 or 2 that respond back. By the end of the 16 weeks, every single one of those men is responding with that term of endearment. Now, in addition to running the recovery side of coaching that I do, I also have a small role in a business coaching mastermind where I work with up and coming entrepreneurs. There's a young man that I was working with in the fitness space. So that's what we do is we help people build and scale their online fitness companies. So this young man was somebody I was working with. He was a mentee of mine, I guess you could say, inside of this mastermind. But I really felt a connection to him. And in fact, I felt almost like he belonged in my world. And I think he felt a draw to me as well, just based on the conversations that we had. Well, I got an opportunity to meet him in person. Everything we've been doing had been done virtually through Zoom. Well, we had an event in April in Nashville. It was the first time I got to meet him in person. And after spending 3 days with him, at dinner, at the event, helping him kind of work through some issues, as the event was over, I wanted him to know how much I cared. And I ultimately want to know who I was and how I showed affection to other men. So at the end of a conversation, I was like, I love you, dude. I really want you to know that. And instantly when I said it, I felt his guard go up. And that just revealed to me, like, okay, there was a reason why I was drawn to you. And there was a reason why I could feel a sense of connection that I feel with the same men. Because when I said that, it's like this young man had never been told that by a strong man in his life. And we've had some conversations, since then about it. That is, just reconfirmed what my own beliefs are, that this is just a guy that has never been told that it's okay to express that level of affection and intimacy to another grown man.
Yeah, it's an incredibly hard thing to come to. I know it took me a while working through stuff, and for me, it wasn't so much that I wouldn't say or accept that with other men. My biggest challenge, and tell me if you've ran into this, was I didn't believe it from women when they would say that. I was like, what do you want? What are you trying to work? What's the angle? What's the manipulation? And of course, stems from my trauma. Have you found that with other men too? Because for me, it was very boundary up, even though, I definitely sexually acted out and all those things, but there was still something with as far as actual real intimacy. And people oftentimes sit there and mistake, sexuality should be intimacy, but it isn't always. And so for me, I was always on guard with that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's so much that I would say I run into men that are unable to accept love from a woman. What I see more often is like a fear of a woman, right? Especially with the younger men that have just been, born and raised in this porn culture. Every interaction, since the time that they were 11, 12 years old that they've had with a grown woman has been behind the scenes in a spectator type of thing. So think about it. If since the age of 12, you're watching people have sex, and the world is telling you, like, sex is intimacy and intimacy is sex, and there's no other type of intimacy other than what you're watching on the screen. Well, every time you're consuming it or every time you're involved in it, you're sitting on the sidelines, right? As a spectator, like you're not involved in the act of it. So what's going on inside a young man's mind, right? Like our brains are not fully developed as men till 26, 27 years old. So at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, I'm learning sex education from a porn screen, right? And the sex education is teaching me that I'm just supposed to be here on the outside as a voyeur, as a consumer, as a spectator to it. So when I'm presented with an opportunity to approach a beautiful woman in real life, I don't know how to talk to her. I don't know how she's going to respond, because the only thing I've ever wanted out of a woman was a physical release. Like, I've never had the ability to actually create, intimacy through a conversation, to look the woman in her eyes. So that's where I see more men struggling. Not fear of, is she going to love me? It's fear of the woman, just the woman. So I don't know if that really answers your question specifically, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just curious about that. I'm kind of selfish in these things. I ask all the questions I want. I figure I get a free session.
Those make those make the best ones, right? It's like
Right.
I've done 150 of these things. Like if you want, you know, my main talking points, like they're out there, man. Let's get into your mind, man.
Yeah. So what maybe data wise working with men and through you've seen with the work, how many is it really early age exposure to pornography? Is there sexual abuse? Is there addiction in the home? And I'm guessing, you talked about it, alluded to it. You had an alcohol drug problem. I had an alcohol drug problem. Are you seeing that as a big commonality with this?
Absolutely, man. And I believe it's because how you do one thing is how you do everything. I'll answer the first question first, and then circle back to that one. So the data shows, this is not data from Rebuilt Recovery. Like this is actually research that anybody can find online. That the average age of first exposure right now is 11 years old. And it's just declining day by day by day by day by day. You said something to me at the beginning before we started recording that you were around 6. It was the same for me. So my kind of first exposure was at 6 years old, but it was a magazine that I found in my dad's sock drawer. Not every 11-year-old, but 90% of the 11-year-old, 80% of the 6-year-olds right now, if you saw them in a restaurant, they would have a tablet in their hand. If you saw them at home, they would have an iPhone in their hand. And here's the thing is no longer does a young boy have to go into his dad's sock drawer when his parents aren't home, hoping he's going to find something. It's right there in that smartphone that's in his pocket 24 hours, 7 days a week. And here's the even scarier part for parents out there, right? Is like the child doesn't have to go look for it. It will find them. Yeah. I've had conversations with parents that will like download videos off of YouTube, and the YouTube video will be linked with an advertisement to a porn site. These apps, these technologies, these companies, these devices, they are money making machines. Mm-hmm. They don't care about you. They don't care about humanity. They don't care about your children. If that quote unquote AI, the algorithm, the smart technology that's smarter than both you and I combined, knows that there's a young vulnerable person on the other side, it will figure out a way to present certain things to them. And that's all that needs to happen with a young kid, right? They need to be presented something that's going to begin to kind of like stir up their curiosity. Then they're going to go willingly down the rabbit hole in and of themselves. So yeah, it's this part is a very big talking point that I'm passionate about. It's not really involved in the work that we do other than just raising the awareness and trying to help men get free. Because I'll have dads come out to me like, how can I prevent my kid from falling into the trap that I'm in right now? Like, well, don't worry about them first, because nothing you do with them will work if you're still struggling it with yourself. So I try to help the men realize like you need to find freedom from this thing first before you're going to keep it out of your children.
It's very much the put your mask on before securing your child.
100%, right? What's the quote from Jordan Peterson? Clean up your own room before you go out and try to save the world, right? So, no, yeah. So that's what we've seen.
Yeah, I find it interesting. I mean, just think about even with most social media now. It's not about reading something or what. You just sit and scroll and you get an ad. I mean, shoot, I don't know how it was if we saw a girl in a thong. This was a rarity. Here you go. That's what it's all over. It's these simple things that can easily catch. You go there, and I know this is the stuff that I have to check myself on. I just do. It's the defense I have to put up, just like with my drinking. Oh goodness, oh good. I have to not get start being inquisitive, like, whoa, who's that? Then click on the profile. Oh, they got a link. And I mean, all this shit, it can just roll really, really fast.
Yeah. Our brains aren't built for any of that. And this is a problem that I see. So I will have men that come into the program and they're like, Frank, I'm committed to quitting porn. I'm so sick and tired of this. And I've had to kind of change the first couple of weeks where we really focus in on the social media side, because for like 6 months I couldn't understand, like, why are these guys struggling? Like, why are they having these relapses? And I was realizing, like, if you stop looking at porn, but then you spend your day scrolling through fitness IG models, like that will lead you to a relapse, because so in the porn space, like that would be called like an edging effect. So if we bring a little bit of neuroscience in here, if you're okay with that. So
Please.
if we understand dopamine is a chemical that is released when we're in the pursuit of our goals. What happens with the internet streaming pornography? It's a super normal stimulus. So it creates like a level 10 hit of dopamine. Maybe going to the gym because it's a goal that's aligned with something outside of yourself. You get like a 6. Maybe if you're working on like a passion project, you're building a business, like you'll get an 8. But porn's going to give you a 10, which is like a way bigger number. Well, maybe scrolling on a fitness model is going to give you like a 7. And as I'm scrolling, it's like every new stimulus is like a new hit. Well, your brain knows that it's only getting 7. It knows where it can get 10, and it wants that ultimate pleasure, right? So eventually you're going to lose conscious control of what's going on. You're going to feel the temptations, you're going to feel the triggers, and before you know it, because you've just been mindlessly scrolling on Instagram all day long, getting up to the edge, you will fall over the cliff. So now in our program, we actually walk these guys through. And number one, like I would recommend to most men, like if you're struggling with this and social media isn't your business. So for me, like our entire platforms are on social medias. I mean,
right.
Everything we do is through the internet. So if I could, I would delete them all. I spend as minimal as time as possible on these apps now. But a lot of the men that are coming in, like these guys are working, they're working in finance, or, they're working in the corporate world, or they're doctors or whatever. It's like, you guys don't need this. Like, hey, everyone just shut it down for a little while. Take it off your phone, and just see how much more time you get back. But if they do need to use it for whatever reason and not willing to completely shut it down, we walk them through a process of kind of how to reset that, how to change your Explore page so these things aren't jumping out at you. But it's an everyday battle. It's something you constantly need to be aware about. Like still to this day, I'm 3.5 years, clean, and there will be things that show up on my Explore page and Instagram. I'm like, how the hell did that get there? Yeah. Because these apps and these algorithms know that I'm a man, almost 38, almost 39 years old. The demographics show that my, or the data shows that my demographics consume these type of things, and we know what that leads to. So they're going to constantly feed those things. But if you are aware enough and you put in the groundwork, you can work through it. Yeah,
you have to. One of my mentors, a gentleman named Greg Champion, he calls it a digital scrub. It's said in no different in doing it with your social media. It's kind of like the Susie Tahoe, the Carla Los Angeles, just the person where you met them and whatever. You got to have that same mentality with this. Yeah. Whatever it is that holds a connection to, like you said, we lose total impulse control. It takes over. Our brain goes into a totally different mode altogether.
Yeah.
It's freaking scary. To be transparent, I could think of times where bad day, didn't want to drink, was kind of early working that recovery process. And then the next thing I noticed, 3 hours had passed of watching porn. Not that I necessarily masturbated or whatever it was. I just went there and I'm like, how did I waste 3 hours of my life just sitting and looking at this? A waste, like gone. It's gone, guys. We don't know how much time we got in this life. It's gone.
So the mind is a powerful thing, man. And the subconscious brain, operates at 11 million data points per second, and the conscious brain is only 40. Now, what does that mean to anybody? Probably not much, other than it's 11 million to 40 ratio of what you're seeing and experiencing in the world is happening subconsciously versus consciously. Like, so there's a lot that we're not even fully aware that we do. Like, if you had a camera on yourself all day long, and you went back and watched it, you'd be like, oh, I didn't know that I do that stupid tick thing. I didn't know that I had this little thing, like, when I eat, or I didn't know that when you enter into a room, you have this weird step thing that you do, because it's all unconscious patterns. I want to stick here one more thing though, because I do want to bring up dating apps, just because it's kind of top of mind, because I had a recent client. It's the same thing, right? I had these guys. It's like, shut off the social media, but then they're swiping right, swiping left for 2-3 hours a day on Tinder. What is the act of swiping on a dating profile? At its fundamental level, it is objectifying women. I'm going to look at an image or two, and I'm going to make a decision in a handful of seconds on whether or not I'm interested in possibly pursuing a relationship. Anybody that's going to tell me that's not objectifying, you don't understand the definition of the word. And if we realize, as porn addicts, we have trained and conditioned and wired ourselves to look at every woman in the world as a sexual object for our own pleasure, getting into the dating app, you're just feeding that animal even more. And that, because what fires together, wires together, you're just hardening those neural pathways. So subconsciously, you're just saying, "Yep, you're the guy that objectifies. You're the guy that objectifies. You're the guy that objectifies." So it's at the end of the day, when willpower is down, at the end of the day, when your energy is low, you're not fully conscious, aware of everything that's going on. That's how you find yourself literally 3 hours into it, just looking for pornography, not even the act of masturbating, because that's dopamine is tied to motivation, not completion. Right. So you're getting the dopamine in the pursuit of like perfect porn video.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the 2-3 hours. Yeah. I remember Terry Crews talking about when he confronted it, it would start at night and the next thing he would know, the sun's come up.
Oh my God. Yeah. Did you have Terry on the show?
I did not. This was something I've tried to talk to him. Please trust me.
You and me both. But no, I heard him. I believe it was on my buddy Ryan's podcast. I believe it was on Order of Man, where he talked about what he looked forward to, like in his movie set days, was when he knew that it was going to be away and they would get rained out or something, or like the shoot would be canceled for whatever reason. Because he knew at this point, I'm going back to the hotel. Curtains are coming down, room's going to be dark, and I'm just going to sit there for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, just looking for it.
And he's one of those an example for people that, like maybe doubt us of how much this is a problem. I mean, look at how that guy looks. Does he look like this is a struggle? Looking at you now and all the work that you do, I would have never have guessed.
Yeah. And that was a big driver for me. I mean, obviously Terry has been an inspiration, and just seeing, I've been a fan of his work for a long time, and I didn't know until I really got into what I'm doing. But I was pushed by the men in my life, and then I really felt the call of God. It's like, because right when you think about when most people hear porn addiction, there's no such thing, or they think, that's for those those squirmy guys, or those guys that just can't have success with women, or the guy that's like living at mom's house or whatever. Still, like, I'm like, let's debunk all of that, because I made a ton of money. I've slept with a lot of beautiful women. I'm not bragging about any of that. I've dated beautiful women. I've competed in world bodybuilding shows and in state titles in bodybuilding, and I've worked in the community. Like, I'm a public figure, not at Terry's level, but I wanted to show that, hey, it doesn't matter, like, if you've been studying human performance, it doesn't matter how quote unquote your success may appear on the outside. This is like every addiction. Yep. It's the same, and it doesn't matter who you are. Porn doesn't care your social status. Yep. Pornography doesn't care how much money is in your bank account. Pornography doesn't care how much muscle you have. It wants to hijack your brain. It wants to hijack your heart, and it wants to keep you hooked on it. Yep. So that was a big reason for me too, as well. Is like I felt I was called and needed here.
Yeah, I thought, well, and I'm glad that you were. Now, can we jump back, because I want to share some of the context for the listener. Childhood, you said pretty early on started with you. Tell me what was going on, because I'm guessing there's a big T trauma in there somewhere. Just speculating.
Yeah, man. I don't know if I have a big T trauma moment. Okay. I will tell you that I didn't come from the greatest home. I love both my parents. They're very active in my life. Here today, I live less than 1.5 miles from my father, and I live 6 miles from my mom. I see them both weekly. So I love my parents. We have an amazing family. But it wasn't the happiest home. I mean, maybe I'm going to reveal some trauma here to myself as I'm kind of thinking about what I'm going to say here. I was like, you might have lied there a little bit. One of my first memories ever was like my dad kind of, tearing the house apart, anger, throwing things, ripping the mailbox out of the front yard and throwing it across the street. Just very angry, very destructive. He never placed his hands on my mom, which I hold a lot of respect for that. But he was angry. And he has his own issues with alcohol. And that's that. So growing up, that's what I saw. I saw my dad. I saw my cousin take his life at 14, 15 years old. I saw my dad's cousin take his life in his late 30s. So I come from a lineage of drug addiction, of alcohol, of suicide. So when I was struggling through my teenage years, just with like thoughts of inadequacy or, thoughts of depression when I was young, I was like, oh, this is like, this is just who we are. Like we're these people that like are never going to be fully happy. Now what that did drive me to do, that drove me to try to become very successful financially and very successful in my career. So there was a moment when I was 12 or 13, I spent the summer at my nephew's house. Not my nephew, my cousin. He's about a year and a half older than me. So I was 12, 13. So this summer I was around 14, 15-year-old boys and girls, or young men and young women. And I can remember a day at the pool where everybody was swimming and I didn't feel comfortable taking my shirt off. So that stuck with me for a really long time. And that was really what got me into bodybuilding, my late teens and early 20s, because I never wanted to feel like that again. I never wanted to not be comfortable taking my shirt off. But the introduction to porn, I think I kind of, mentioned it here at the beginning, came at 6 years old. So, nosy kid, just like every single one of us were. I'm kind of snooping around parents' house and, going to dad's drawer and happened to see something that made me feel a little, curious inside. And, you'd seen your sister's body in the bathing suit, or, at this point you've seen your parents naked when you're that young. It's like, there's something different about, these bodies. So that, I wouldn't say that was the beginning of the addiction, because how does a 6-year-old get addicted to pornography when you have to have magazines for it? But we got the internet around 15, 16, so maybe a decade later. I had still, would go look at dad's magazines, or we'd steal them from the, the gas station and take them out to the woods and whatnot. All stuff that, kids in our generation did, I would assume, right?
Absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly what we did.
Yeah. 15, 16, I think, is when we got the internet. So, probably within that first hour having a computer in my, in my room, it's like, I'm on the chat rooms and it's like, are there naked pictures here on this thing? Now I don't have to go into the, to dad's drawers anymore. And this was, this was slow, like dial up. So, like if you were trying to masturbate, it's like you would be done before the image was downloaded. Yeah. When it really became a problem though, was in my early 20s. So I was working in the wireless industry at the time. This is early 2000s. So think Motorola Razr, in terms of like the cell phones. That was the era that I was doing it. This is also the time that BlackBerry, was big. They were the precursor to the iPhone. I believe I was one of the first maybe 100 people in the world to have the colored screen BlackBerry. So think what I found on, my bedroom on the computer. Now I had this computer in my pocket 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So being kind of a regional manager, you worked at different malls, you worked at different locations, you're driving all around. Like it just basically became like, now I got porn in my pocket. If I'm driving, from one store to the other, I'm watching it in the car. If I'm stressed at work, I'll just run up to the Dillards or the Macy's. They got these private bathrooms in there. You can get real quiet and intimate. I'd watch porn and masturbate like in public places. So for me, it really became, I guess, what would be an addiction around that age. Now, was I looking at it and through that lens back then? Absolutely not. No. Because for me, like my dad, so my introduction to pornography and men was that, men have this thing and they keep it a secret from everybody. So I was just following the patterns, right? Like, I'm going to be consuming pornography and nobody's going to know about it. That was the pattern that I had been, I had been taught, not taught, but I just seen. So that became my pattern. And honestly, man, like, because it didn't impact or affect anything else I was doing, like I never really thought about. I never really thought it. I was like, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. And maybe it's a little weird that, I'm doing it this much, but remember, like, I had already thought that there was something different about me. I'd already thought, you got drugs in your family. At least you're not going down that hole. Oh, you got some issues with drinking here. You're drinking every day, but you're still showing up to work. You're still making a lot of money. So that's not your thing here. Just accept this because it's not really affecting you in any negative way. And then, 20s, you get into some serious relationships, you start getting caught with things, it creates massive fights. And then you start projecting things off. Well, if you were giving me what I wanted, this wouldn't be the case. Or, you start becoming the victim to them. In reality, you're the one that's creating all these scenarios. So to kind of speed up here, man, I mean, bodybuilding, entrepreneurship, succeeding, all these things. Like that was the projection to the world, like success, success, success. Meanwhile, depression, anxiety, you know, lack of like insecurity, like just am I ever going to be enough? Why does, even though I'm making all this money and I'm achieving these bodybuilding things and I'm dating all these beautiful women, like why does my life still suck? And I still wouldn't look at the porn as the reason behind it. It wasn't until, Jason, I joined a business mastermind in 2017 that my life began to change in the right direction. It still took a couple years, but it was joining a group. So I had a ticket brokerage. What we did is we bought and resold concerts, sporting events, theater shows, comedy, so forth and so forth. Think StubHub on like a level 1 scale. Sure. Is what we do. We're actually partners with StubHub. We use their site for a lot of our distribution, but that was not a passionate business. It was a money-making machine. So it wasn't something I wanted to do for a long time. So as I was ready to exit that, I was like, I wanted to get into online fitness coaching. I'd worked in gyms. I'd held some clients on the side, writing workouts and programs. I was like, I'm ready to really scale. Like I really want to make this thing massive, and I want to make online fitness, you know, my life. I want to be able to do this full time. So I hired a business coach to help me build my first program. And as a part of that business coaching, I received a ticket to an event in Toronto. And it was at that event for the first time that I was around, you know, like strong Christian men. So it's a business organization, but it's led by somebody that really puts their faith in front of everything that they do. And their dad's a pastor, so he brought his dad up at the end of the event, shared a little message, and something there spoke to me. You know, it was interesting because I didn't know back then, but I also met some amazing people at that event. Actually, Josh, who I was telling you the story about with the I Love You, I met him at that event. So as I returned back to Tampa from leaving Toronto, I started to spend a lot of time here locally with guys that were part of this group. You know, they had these regular workouts I'd go to weekly where we would train together, we'd have lunch, we'd do all these amazing things. About 18 months of just showing up, I began to see and witness different type of men. And this led me to, you know, finding and discovering my faith in August of 2018. It was actually with Josh in Orlando on Church Street. He had flown down from Philadelphia. An incredible story. It's the episode 1 on the Superman Life. It really wants the full length details there. But it was outside of a steakhouse on Church Street that I gave my life to Christ on October 22nd of 2018. In those next 4 months, man, it was me, you know, really evaluating who I was and how I was living. So I made a lot of, you know, choices and decisions to really clean myself up. Then starting with alcohol. So, you know, as it turned into 2019, like New Year's was the last time I drank for a while. I mean, I've reintroduced alcohol to just because I never felt like I had a major problem with it, but I'll have a glass of wine here and there, drink at dinner but I went 18 months without a sip because I wanted to prove that to myself that I could do that. Alcohol, drugs, all these things. And it leads us back to that gym where we were working at. Well, let me add another part in here because around the same time of finding my faith was the time I stumbled across a podcast. And it was actually my mentor who was interviewing a gentleman by the name of Michael John Cusick. Michael John Cusick is the author of Surfing for God, and he runs an incredible therapy and organization out west, helping men find freedom. But the thesis behind the book Surfing for God is that, you know, any man that knocks on a brothel door, this is a quote from G.K. Chesterton, any man that knocks on a brothel door is searching for God. So when we're online and we're searching for pornography, all we're doing is trying to fill the empty hole in our heart that only God can fill. So that was an interesting podcast listen in, or one, because I was very new in my faith, but it was also the first time I heard 2 grown men that I highly respected openly discuss their own personal struggles with porn and porn addiction. So that was kind of the aha moment. Oh, maybe porn addiction is a real thing. Like I wasn't familiar with NoFap forums. Like I wasn't that guy. So I didn't know that there was actually like these whole communities out there where guys were trying to do this together. For me, it was like I heard a podcast. I then read Gary Willison's book, Your Brain on Porn. I listened to some TED Talks. I looked at the research and I'm like, all of this makes a whole lot of sense to me. There might be something to this. And it wasn't until, again, I heard another man shared with me. So I was back at the gym working out with the guys at Critical Bench, Thursday, February 14th, 2019. So it's ironic that it is the day of love, you know, whatever that is, Hallmark, whatever. But
Sure.
I had been in a relationship with a woman that I, you know, was in love with at the time, or at least I thought I was. And, you know, I foresaw a future, but I also didn't foresee a future unless things change within me. So as I'm sitting there with my friend Zach, who's incredibly strong man, like alpha, Marine, just fit. He's like, dude, like out of nowhere, we're having a conversation. He's like, dude, I just want to tell you about this breathing exercises that I'm doing. It's helping me harness my sexual energy, and I'm not looking at porn anymore. And I was like, what are you just talking about? Because we weren't talking about porn. He and I never discussed porn, issues with it, struggling with it, addiction. I'm like, say that again, Zach. He's like, yeah, man, like this breathing is helping me stay away from porn. I was like, well, why does that matter? He's like, dude, you don't understand. He's like, I've been addicted to this thing for a decade. Now, Zach is Marine. Like he fought for our country in Afghanistan. He's like, bro, when I was overseas, man, it would be 5-6 times a day. The military just feeds it to you. So I kind of felt like there was an opportunity there for me with him sharing. I was like, bro, I got to tell you something. Like, it's crazy that you're saying this, because here's what I've been looking into. Here's the TED Talk that I listened to. Yeah. Here's the books that I'm reading. I think I got a major problem as well. And I just felt right then and there like this weight being lifted off of me. It's like, wow, I just admitted something I never told anybody else about. It felt good. It felt really good.
I bet.
Yeah, for real. And I was like, Zach, dude, like, I don't know why this came up here today, man, but I just want to thank you because I think you just changed my life. I'm like, I'm so sick and tired, man. I'm sick and tired of this being inside of me. I'm sick and tired of this being a part of my life. I'm ready and committed to change. But I need 2 things to happen here, Zach. Are you with me? He's like, absolutely, dude. Anything you need, man. I was like, I need you to be my accountability partner. I just knew back then, man, like that I was not going to be able to do this thing by myself. I was like, will you be there, man? Like if I'm having a tough day, can I reach out to you? Will you check in on me regularly? Just make sure I'm living right and looking at the right things. He's like, absolutely, man. I love you, dude. And I was like, wow, I love you too. I was like, the next thing is Stephanie needs to know. He's like, you sure? I was like, absolutely, man. I've been lying for 35 years, dude. I'm done. I'm done lying. So it was interesting. I had about a 40-minute drive home that day, Jason, and the lies are just creeping in, man. You don't need to say nothing, man. Like, she's not going to know. What are you doing? You really like this, don't you? It feels so good. Like, Zach will never know. Just keep it, man. Like, it's not like, look at how successful you've been. Like, you'll be able to still go out and win. So Ashley didn't say anything to her that night. It wasn't until the next morning. I think it was just on my heart, man. And I think God was talking to me. So I went into my closet. So because I'd been caught so many times in previous relationships, it had gotten to the point, Jason, where I had a secret laptop.
Oh, shit.
It was a laptop that sat in my closet, and it only came out when I was by myself. There was a different login password. It had nothing downloaded on it. It was simply there for me to consume pornography. So as I pulled out of the closet and I walked into the bathroom where Stephanie was getting ready, I was like, hey, babe, I need to tell you something. She's like, what's the computer? What's the laptop? I'm like, just stick with me. And I just dumped it all, man. I'm like, I know you know that I've been watching this thing. Cause I used to ask her, right? You know, like, hey, do you want to watch porn with me? I think it'll make our sex life a little bit better. I'm like, I know you watch it. I know you know that I watch it, but I don't think you really understand, you know, how severe this has been. And I just shared everything, you know, found it when I was 6, you know, the internet thing, you know, finding the download thing, the cell phone, you know, getting on the BlackBerry, the 20 years, the secret computer, all this and that. I'm like, I'm so sick and tired of this, Stephanie. Like, I'm committed and I want you to see me do this. So I took the laptop. It always sounds more impressive if you say you ripped a laptop apart with 2 hands, but they're actually made in 2 different pieces. Right. I just took the laptop and I kind of separate, you know, I just ripped it for where it was actually put together. So now I'm here holding, you know, two pieces of laptop in my hand. I was like, see, like I'm done and I'm sick and tired. And she's like, good. But it was still kind of awkward because we're like, what do we do now? I was like, well, I need to go make a phone call. So I called Zach and I told him, and then the next thing I did is I recorded a video message for my friend Josh, who, you know, he was my spiritual mentor. You know, he was the one there with me when I gave my life to Christ. And I said, hey, man, just want to thank you, for everything you've done for me over these past couple of months. I'm going to share something here with you today that I don't think you've ever known. Maybe you've thought these things about me, but here's the truth. And I just dumped it, man. I was like 20-year porn addiction, the whole story. I'm like, but I'm done, man. And I'm going to prove this to you. I'm like, was the computer where I watched pornography. I'm like, it's going in the garbage. And here's the amazing part, Jason, is as I'm ending that video message, like I look in the camera and I was like, Josh, I don't know what's coming out of this, but something great will happen.
Yeah.
And here we are, man. 3+ years later,
chills there, Frank.
I still get them in every time I tell it, dude.
But that's so cool, like the conversation we were having with Zach in the gym and all these things. It just shows how when we change, it's one of the sayings I stick to. We can't get healthy in the same environment that made us sick, and that's the changing of ways, the people that we're around, with our interactions and everything. And it's so cool to hear how, for you, it just kind of, you got your higher power, which many of people, I think, with any 12-step program struggle, or just getting clean, period. If I encourage it's something you explore, whatever it means to you. I'm more along the lines of you, but that's what works for me. But yeah, it's so cool how all this stuff, and you were just like, I am going to change my environment. I am going to become transparent and live this life. And Frank, isn't it so much fucking easier to live that way, where you're just like, oh,
dude,
thank goodness.
Yeah, no. So I love this, man. I rewrote the narrative, in my mind about it, right? Like when you open up and you just admit you release that power, like when it's held secret and nobody knows about it, that thing outside of you has control if it's a secret. And I get a lot of men that come to me like struggling with confidence with women, struggling with confidence with themselves. It's a whole lot easier to demonstrate confidence when you're walking in integrity.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I love it, man. Frank, we're going to do some random questions. I'm going to leave you with some final thoughts, but and hopefully we can do this again down the road, because I got so much more I could talk to you about.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
Oh, yeah. If people want to find out more about you, the work you're doing, your book, how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely, man. Well, yeah, I mean, anybody that wants to download the 7-step guide, it's a free ebook, 7 Steps to Living Life Without Porn. You can get that at literally the7stepguide.com. Just spell out the word 7. If you guys are more interested in, maybe like some tips and tricks, and not tricks, but some real practical advice. So we do a lot on YouTube, a video a day. So you can find that at Coach Frank Rich. Connect with me personally. Just find me on Instagram, Coach Frank Rich. Send me a message to explore more about Rebuilt Recovery. It's rebuiltrecovery.com. Anybody that maybe wants to check out the podcast, that's at the Superhuman Life. Any platform we're on.
We'll make sure to throw that in the description link for everybody. All right, Frank, this is where we just have some fun. I just asked some random questions. If you could have dinner with any one person, living or not, who would it be?
Ed Milet.
Really? Why?
I think when you have people that truly inspire you, and this is Ed's work, right? Like Ed talks about the difference between motivation and inspiration. When you have people that ultimately like inspire you, like to your core, and this is what Ed does to me, I think it's because you see parts of yourself in them. Yeah. So I just I know people that know Ed, and they've described the energy in the room when he's there. I'd like to be able to witness and experience that. And I have a lot of questions I'd like to ask Ed.
Absolutely. Right. Hey, Ed, do you have about 7 hours?
He may give, knowing some of the things I've heard about Ed, he may give it to me.
Yeah. Those are the coolest situations, aren't they? When you can and sit and have that, that's what I like. I love doing this, but sometimes I wish I had more than kind of trying to get a good hour out for people that's helpful. Cause I could probably sit here and go, hey Frank, let's just go ahead and get lunch, man. We'll come on back. We'll just chat over lunch. Oh shoot.
Yeah. But that was why that was a tough question for me to answer, right? Because I mean, with the podcast, like I've been able to speak and interview a lot of the people that I would want to.
Sure.
Like that is the amazing thing with this, platform, this content platform. It's like selfishly, like it's just making us better. So yeah, I think it would be Ed and Jesus. Obviously, that was going to be my first. I was like, no, you need a better answer than that.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go when I talked with Lamar Odom. That's what he said. He was the first person to answer Jesus, and it's like, okay, somebody's finally said that. I was waiting on that one. Pet peeves. What are some things that just irk you and maybe put you into that having to do some breathing practices or whatever else?
People that live in a victim mindset.
Oh, yeah, that's tough. That's tough to. How do you work on that with the people the men that you do work with, and realizing that a lot of it's self-victimizing?
Questions.
Yeah.
Like good coaching is the ability to ask the right questions. You know, I don't ever want it to come across like I have the answers for anybody's problems. I want to help them reveal the answers to themselves. And because I pay a lot of attention to language, the words that we use, the words that we say carry a lot of power over us. It's very easy within a matter of minutes meeting somebody if they're a victim. Like they reveal themselves to you through the words that they say.
Yeah. I've become a little more attuned to that. So it's interesting to hear you say that.
Through this, right? I mean, through this, right? Like when you spend your life in conversation and you begin to look at it as an art form, right? That's kind of what we do here. There's an element of, artistic conversation that I believe we're at least aiming towards. Did we succeed? I don't know. But at least, when you do spend your life living and you've been very intentional about improving that, you pay a lot of attention to number one, the words that you speak. But when you begin to pay attention to the words that you speak, the words that other people speak, or the words that people speak, just reveal themselves to you.
Most important thing you do when you first wake up in the morning?
Get out of bed.
Yeah.
Truthfully, because I think hitting snooze is one of the most destructive things that people can do for the overall quality of their life.
Total transparency, still one of my biggest struggles. Still.
Put the phone across the room.
Okay. I'll let my girlfriend Cassandra know. Hey, gentlemen, I told you about Frank that I was going to be talking to. He said phone across the room because we're both guilty. I think we've got different times that go off, and it's like, bad cycle. Well,
I mean, so I would advise keep the phone out of the room. Because you're just opening up the gateway to bad behavior patterns, right?
Sure.
And I'm speaking obviously more to the men that I work with. I think that maybe some people have the ability to maybe have their phone and not have it be a compulsive issue, but most of us do struggle with compulsions in and around our phone. So once again, 11 million data points in our subconscious mind, right? So if our subconscious mind knows that phone and everything in the world is with arm's reach away, it will find it. But why I would say put it across put whatever alarm clock you're using across the floor, because when it goes off, you have to get up and walk over there to turn it off. And there you're forced to make a conscious decision. Like turn it off and hit snooze and return back to bed, walk over, or now that I'm already up, like I'm already awake, I know that an extra 5 minutes is not going to improve the overall quality of my day. So I might as well just kickstart my day by getting the things done that need to be done. And this is all derived from, Ed Mylett's, definition of confidence. Confidence is built and kept by keeping the small promises you make to yourself. Well, the first promise you make to yourself is what time you're going to wake up. If you don't keep that promise, you are already starting the day out 0 for 1 in the confidence building chart.
I'll be damned. I never thought of it that way. Damn it, Frank. Now you just put something on me, but I'm appreciative because that's the mode I'm in now. It's
like, man. I don't think that damn it. You're trying to make me better, Frank. Stop doing that.
Right? Why would you? I know it now. I'm going to DM you later and ask you another question that'll help me grow as a man. Last random question here. This is always an interesting one. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, man. Dude,
tough, right?
I instantly went like I want to read people's minds, but then I was like, no, I do not want that. I don't want to know what's going on in there, man. Superpowers, man. I feel like I have it all, dude. Like honestly, time travel, but I don't know if that's a superpower.
Sure, why not? I think there's probably been superpowers. Yeah, but why time travel? Do you have a particular place you'd want to go, like time era and location?
Jokingly, like I want to go back to like the beginning of time and just be like, Adam, don't bite the apple, dude. Come on. That's kind of facetious. I think it'd be cool. So I went to the Biltmore over the summer in Asheville, God, what's the family's name now? My mind just went blank. So whoever was the family that built the Biltmore estate, learning about the gentleman who was 32 when he commissioned the house, walking through his library. I'm a big reader. I think it'd be cool to go back in time and have a conversation with him. I think it'd be cool to, just witness kind of like the building of this country. So I had my 6th generation great grandfather fought in the Revolutionary War, which I just found out a couple weeks ago. I'm an all blood, I'm an all blood, all American, man. I love our country. I love what it stands for. I love what it's built upon. I think being able to go back in time and shake his hand would be something really, really special.
That would be cool. Hey, Frank, thank you again for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'm going to keep in touch with you and be reaching out. So, if I get too annoying with questions, you just let me know. Hey, I normally charge people for this, pal. But if you could drop any advice, anyone that's not necessarily struggling with pornography or addiction per se, just some of those life challenges that maybe you would drop on one of your clients, what might that be?
Yeah. And first of all, Jason, thank you for today, man. If brother, reach out anytime, man. And if you want to do round 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, man, I really enjoyed this conversation. A whole lot different than a lot. Tell me your story and all this stuff. So I really appreciate today, man.
Absolutely.
No, I think, I think a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit. I think a lot of people accept limitations that are pressed upon them through parenting, through society, through culture. So a piece of advice is you are stronger than you're giving yourself credit for, and there's a dream in your heart right now. There's something there's something that keeps you up, or there's something that pulls you out of bed, or when everything is going perfect, and you sit there and you think about like what would be the most perfect life or most meaningful life. We all have this dream. That dream is placed there for a reason, and I use the word placed very intentionally. And everything you need to bring that dream to reality is inside of you. That doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to do what's necessary, and you're willing to have faith and allow time to work itself out, I believe we all can go out and create what I've coined our own superhuman life.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of the Knockin Doorz Down hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page. This podcast is owned by KDD Media Company.